Good morning. It's Thursday, the 8th, July 8th, the 28th of Tammuz. It's a Thursday again. Shabbas will be Rosh Chodesh of Menachem Av. We're studying the entire Talmud, one page, one line at a time, presently studying Meseches Shabbos, chapter 6. We're Samach Aleph, Amud Beis, that's 61b. And with Hashem's help, we'll be turning the page today to 60, Samach Beis Amud Aleph, that would be 62b. We are in the tail end of a discussion about kameyas, about amulets, about how and when and if they could be used on Shabbos. There are different types of amulets. As we mentioned yesterday, some of them are with certain herbal combinations and compounds that were known to have some kind of medical or maybe alternative kind of healing. I certainly cannot explain to you how that works. There were other kameyas, other amulets or things that people would wear as I don't want to call it a good luck charm, that's not what it was, but it was meant to be a healing kind of charm. There's some kind of thing that you wear that was supposed to channel healing energies, properties, or whatever. And sometimes they had writings in them. Apparently they had holy writings. Maybe they might have had Kabbalistic names of God or angels or verses from the Torah that describe Hashem's healing or a prayer. Archaeologists have found, and we've discussed this before, so I'm just going to mention in passing, that apparently from the time of the first Beis HaMikdash, in Ketef Hinnom, in the valley where some of the ancient graves are, they found silver amulets that had in it the words of Birchas Kohanim, the priestly blessing. Now, I'm not telling you if that was a halachic practice or not, but just to know that there was such a thing going on for a long time. Our question was, could you wear it on Shabbos? And the answer is no, unless it is verified. What does a verified kameya look like? Does it have a little, a logo from the Better Business Bureau or from, from an Amazon approved account?
It's a hechsher.
Does it have a hechsher? Yeah. Does the chief rabbi of Ashkelon put his stamp on it? How does it work? I just pulled the city of Israel out of the hat. There's no, or is there a fingerprint from some? So in truth, our Gemara yesterday discussed that there was a process for verifying. There are some nuanced opinions about exactly how something could be verified. Suffice it to say, a kameya that is proven to work, or I should say a kameya writer who has written 3 different kameyas for 3 different maladies and that proved to be effective, has some special kind of credibility. He becomes known as an expert kameya writer. Now, there are different genre, different types of kameyas, different formula. And sometimes a formula could be more trustworthy than the author. Sometimes the author might be more trustworthy than the formula. Sometimes one person might find the kameya effective, but we're not fully confident that that would mean that would work for everyone. Maybe his mazel is super powerful, at least possibly. And so we said the real ideal arrangement, this is what our Papa says, would be one writer, 3 style of kameyas, for 3, each one healing 3 different individuals. Then we really know this guy is an expert in his field. He gets his degree, and now he can go on and write kameyas. Otherwise, and such a person, his kameyas would be so dependable that you could even possibly wear it on Shabbos. Although otherwise, the Chazal don't want you to wear an unexpert kameya lest you come to carry it or other issues. That's what we've been discussing until now. Today, we're actually going to pick up in the middle of a conversation. The question was, there was a question in the Gemara. Are kameyas holy? And the Gemara says, L'may nafkamina. I don't remember if we used the word L'may nafkamina. The Gemara wants to know, L'may hilchasa. Is there a halachic implication if a kameya is considered holy or not? And so the Gemara says, well, maybe the halacha would be, do you have to save it from a fire? And the Gemara says, that question has already been resolved. There's a Bryce, I think, that says that you're not allowed to save kameyas or brachis. A beer cone, I said maybe it's like a bencher or a siddur. There's some discussion in the commentary, but a text that has brachas on it that people might not remember by heart. And although it's important, you don't save it from the fire, so that can't be our question. So the Gemara says, well, maybe it's about geniza. Does it belong in shemis? Does it need an honorable disposal? As you know, we don't throw out holy writings in the garbage. We don't burn them. They need to be honorably disposed of in a geniza. It's buried. And we actually have to think, we have a lot of gratitude to the notion of geniza, because, for example, and I mentioned in passing yesterday, the Cairo Geniza, which was a repository of holy and and sometimes not holy writings for over almost 1,000 years. And thanks to that, we know a whole lot more about our Jewish ancestors and previous Jewish generations than we would have otherwise known, because of this notion, the idea of Geniza, of Shemus. Over there, they would deposit it in a place known as the Geniza, and it was in the Ben Ezra Shul in Fastat, in the old Jewish community in Egypt. There are smaller Genizas found elsewhere. And then I think one of the tragedies from a Jewish perspective is not complete control over the writings and the texts of the Jewish people of Iraq after the fall of Iraq. The Americans toppled Saddam Hussein's regime, and many Jewish books and texts were taken, I believe, by the State Department and brought to the States. And there's a big debate, and it seems like the inclination is that they're going to be returned to Iraq. And the Jewish community is obviously very disappointed about this, because the Jewish people say those Jewish works don't belong to the Iraqi government. It belongs to the Jewish people, maybe the Jewish people that come from Iraq. And it reminds me of another famous debate, which just to touch upon, which is the Aleppo Codex, right? Which came from Aleppo, and it was a question of much of it is missing. And the question is, who does it belong to? Does it belong to the state of Israel? Does it belong to the how do you call it, immigrants that came from Syria? Does it belong to somebody else? So there are a lot of big questions that arise from here. But the bottom line is that thanks to these notions of Geniza, we have a lot more stuff that tells us about our Jewish past than we would have otherwise. I'm sorry, Rabbi Allen, I cut you off. Go ahead.
I was in that synagogue.
Ben Ezra? Oh, Shkaya, for sharing that. Fantastic. And you have it right there in handy.
I was reading it. It was built in the 9th century AD.
Which makes it just about 1,000 years old, right? Or no, more than 1,000 years old. But they found it in 1890s or whatever. So it still is just about 1,000 years. Dr. Hammer.
Is it mentioned anywhere whether you could take a kamea to the bathroom?
That's our next discussion.
Oh.
Good call. Good call. So question A was, do you save it from a fire? The answer is no. Question 2, does it belong in Geniza? The answer is yes. Question 3, the question that I was setting up for, thank you, Dr. Hammer, is can you bring it into the bathroom? A very good question. So I'm going to share the screen and we're going to take a look and we're going to get started. I hit record, right? Yes, I did. Before we start, I just want to share with you a very fast story someone just told me in shul today. The guy is visiting here for the summer told me that as a child he lived in Queens, some far off place I'm sure no one's ever heard of, and the family got to be close to Chabad people because they worked in the Diamond District, and so there were some Chabadniks there, and they suggested that they should go visit the Rebbe when the Lubavitch Rebbe was giving dollars and blessings. And so they'd gone a number of times, or a few times, usually around holiday time. And he told me this. He told me that his mother would take them, but it was always a frustrating experience because there are thousands of people and it's squishy and it wasn't, you have to really want to be there. And so, but they would go anyways. But, until you get the dollar and you saw the Rebbe and it would make them feel good. But until then, it could have been a little bit of an overwhelming experience. And one year they went for lekach. The Rebbe would give out ugat dvash, honey lekach, before Rosh Hashanah and before Hoshana Rabbah. And it's a tradition. Actually, it was before Yom Kippur, I think, and before Hoshana Rabbah. And the tradition is for a sweet New Year. And many people would go to the Rebbe for a New Year bracha for the holidays. And so she went and she brought the family. It was a boy and a girl. And they get in and it's very crowded and it's overwhelming and the son isn't feeling well. And so the mom brings the son to the car. I didn't ask. This is in the 80s. So things were a little different back then. Maybe a car was left running. I didn't ask. But long story short, after hours of waiting, the mother passes by the Rebbe and receives the lekach. The father passes by the Rebbe, receives his honey lekach. The daughter passes by the Rebbe and receives her lekach, and they're ready to continue walking. And the Rebbe calls back the girl, the family, and hands another piece of lekach and says, "This is for your brother."
Wow.
So, I'm not sure what to make exactly of the story. The fact is, no one told the Rebbe that the brother is missing. So how did the Rebbe know, or how did the Rebbe have the presence of mind after seeing thousands of people to either remember that there was a boy missing, or the spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh to know that a brother's missing. But the Rebbe cared enough to, on a busy day like that, to notice and call back and give another piece of lekach for the brother who wasn't feeling well, and the mother forced to stay in the car. So I heard that story and I thought that was something worthy of sharing. And now we'll share the screen. Here we go. Here we go. Again, Dr. Hammer's question. Ella, rather, our question is, and let me just make it here. Rather, what's the issue? What's the question? If there is sanctity to the kameya, likanes behem beis hakisei, may one enter the restroom? Doctor, you see, you're really on target. So the Gemara says, what is the halacha? Can you bring a kameya into the facilities, into the bathroom or not? What's the question? Yesh behem kedusha, do they have a degree of sanctity? And therefore you can't bring a holy thing into the bathroom. Like we know you shouldn't bring tefillin into the bathroom. And like we discussed at length, as Mark reminded us yesterday in the Maseches Brachos. Alternatively, ein bahem kedusha, maybe they are not considered sanctified, they don't have sanctity, you could bring them into the restroom. This shari, and therefore it would be permissible. Tashema, let's try to resolve this with the following excerpt from the Mishnah. Our Mishnah taught, you're not allowed to wear a kameya on Shabbos outside when it does not come from a verified kameya source. You can't wear a kameya if it's not mumcha. Let's infer from here, hamin hamumcha, if it comes from an expert, nafik, you're allowed to go outside on Shabbos wearing this kameya. What would that tell us? Here's what it would tell us. If you're going to suppose a kameya has sanctity, well, then we've got a problem. How would Chazal ever allow you to wear a kameya? Why? There are times that you'll need the facilities, the bathroom, and you can't wear something holy into the bathroom. So you would have to take it off, and then you'd end up carrying it. So from the fact that the rabbis allow you to wear a kameya, can't we infer that they don't have sanctity? Therefore, you don't have to take it off to go to the bathroom. Therefore, we're not afraid you'll carry it on Shabbos. You like that Gemara logic? Again, the Amris Kameya, if a Kameya is holy, then sometimes people need the bathroom, and he might need the bathroom. And then we're practically setting them up to carry it in 4 amas in the public domain. That would be a biblical prohibition. And therefore, it's clear that they don't have sanctity, says the Gemara. And then the Gemara says, no, we cannot infer from here that kameyas do not have sanctity. You know why? What kind of kameya, what kind of amulet are we saying that one can wear on Shabbos if it comes from an expert? The kameya shelikarin, we're talking about an amulet that does not have holy words, holy writings. All it has is spices, herbs. That kind of kameya you could wear out, but we cannot infer from here yet that a kameya with writing does not have sanctity. Sigmar pushes back and says, no way, that's not a fair statement. That's not true. V'atanya, let's take a look at a brisa that we should know. What does the brisa say? The brisa commenting, elaborating on our Mishnah. Again, our Mishnah teaches us that you're not allowed to go out on Shabbos with a kameya. She'eino min hamumcha. It's not verified, but you can go out with a mumcha, kameya that is verified. And then the brisa elaborates and says, echad kameya shaksav, whether we're talking about a written amulet which would have these holy writings, echad kameya shal ikrin, or a kameya that has herbs in it. So the fact that you can wear both of them should infer that it does not have sanctity. Gemara says, no. Elahacha b'mayaskinan, which kind of individual are we allowing to wear a kameya? A certain kind of sick person. A person who's really sick. Why? What's the difference between a person who's really sick and a person that's not really sick? Pikuach nefesh pushes off every element of Torah. Rashi, ishakale minei, if you would get rid of it, he'd be in trouble. So therefore, the shari l'meil be'analisik, he say, mishum pikuach nefesh. If this thing's keeping you alive, you could wear the kameya into the restroom. So maybe the only kind of person who's allowed to wear a kameya on Shabbos is a person who it's life or death, and therefore they're allowed to go into the bathroom. Therefore, they can't and won't take it off. Therefore, you can carry it on Shabbos. But a person that's just sickly, but not pikuach nefesh, not a sakana kind of situation where their life is literally in danger, they would not be allowed to wear a kameya because it probably has sanctity. The Gemara is not happy yet. But Tanya, can't be. Because the brisa that teaches us about the laws of Shabbos and wearing a kameya, if it's a verified, expert kameya, states, echad choyle sheyesh bo sakana, ve'echad choyle she'ein bo sakana. We do not distinguish between the kameya that is there to help a person that is in a life or death situation, or even a person who's not in a life or death situation. Therefore, we should be able to infer from here that kameyas are not kadosh. They don't have sanctity, because if they did have sanctity, we already know you're allowed to wear it, and how could you wear it into the bathroom? And if you would take it off before going to the bathroom, you'll end up carrying it. If you're confused, bear with me a moment. I know it's a little bit of a back and forth, as happens occasionally in the Gemara. Ella, the Gemara answers, Kiva Demasi. Maybe we'll say this. Being that it is a healing item, and we're having it for healing, even though he may be holding it, Shaper dummy, this might not be considered carrying, because it is a way that this decorative item is worn. Let's see Rashi, and then we'll see Rabbi Steinsaltz. Tachshitayu, this is really his ornament. Hilkach inami ma'aseh le'dalad amis biyadayim lo mechayev. Although he is carrying something, it might not really be like you're carrying it. Why? Because carrying is to transport something from one place to another. But what if carrying is how you wear it? Well, then maybe the Gemara says this would not be a Shabbos transgression. I would not be surprised if this would be confusing to you, because this runs contrary to everything we know about Shabbos. And so don't get stuck up on it. The Gemara has a proposal that maybe carrying it would also be considered wearing it. The Gemara says, no way. No way, that can't be. The whole condition that one is allowed to wear a kameya is that they're not going to carry it. You're not allowed to carry it for amis and neshus rabim. And the Gemara is not going to give its final answer. We're talking about a very specific kind of kameya, or that it is covered in a thick, not transparent covering of leather. Rashi, the leka genusa imayla beisakisei, but lebayla mishkali. Now that it's wrapped up, so you're not exposing the names of Hashem, you're not exposing the verses of the Torah to the restroom. It's like it's in a double covering, and therefore it's acceptable to bring it into the bathroom. The Gemara is not fully done, but the Gemara is basically done. So let me now go back. I know this was a confusing Gemara, but the Gemara asked the question that Dr. Hammer asked: can you bring a amulet into the bathroom? And the Gemara, which is the question of does it have sanctity or not? And the Gemara tries to infer that you may bring it into the bathroom because it doesn't have sanctity. How so? Well, if you're allowed to wear it on Shabbos and we're not afraid you're going to take it off, we must infer that you could bring it into the bathroom. Well, the Gemara says, no, maybe we're only talking about the non-sanctified or non-Kaddish amulet, namely the herbs. The Gemara says, no, because the Brisa says whether it's herbs or writing. So the Gemara says maybe, I'll have to keep track of all the steps here. And then the Gemara says, maybe we're talking only about a person that's in a really, really mortal illness, and therefore they won't remove it, and they have to wear it into the bathroom, and it's pikuach nefesh, and so therefore we'll allow him to disgrace Hashem's name by bringing it into the bathroom. The Gemara says no, because the same Brisa tells us even if you're not mortally sick. So the Gemara says maybe we're not afraid if you carry it, because maybe carrying is considered wearing. I'm going to bookmark this line. I have a feeling the people that study the Gemara in depth have a lot of fun with this line. because how could you make such a suggestion? But the Gemara answers that you're not allowed to carry it. Rather, we're talking about that it's covered up. If it's covered up, you're allowed to bring it to the bathroom. I just wanted to take a look at this Rabbi Steinsaltz here. In terms of healing, there's no difference if the amulet is hanging on your neck or carrying. So just like the rabbis permitted you to wear it around your neck, so too, this is not the maskana, this is not the final answer. But at this point, the Gemara is thinking maybe Chazal said that carrying it is also considered like wearing an ornament. I'm surprised no one comments here. Let me look in. So by the way, just to point out, we've jumped onto page 62a, Samach Beis Amar Aleph. It's a nice milestone for our Gemara here. Let me just take a look about this proposal that you'd be allowed to have it not considered carrying. I guess maybe the reason why I'm not seeing a lot of chatter is because it's ultimately only a passing hava. I mean, it's only a passing suggestion. It's not, doesn't actually gain steam. So, okay, so again, long story short, the mechupa ba'or, it's covered in leather, and since the writing is covered, the name of Hashem is not degraded when he's brought into the bathroom. Rashi says the same. So the Gemara, so that's the answer. Now the Gemara is going to troubleshoot it and work through some potential concerns that you and I might think of. Although, so here's what I want you to do for a moment. When I ask you what is tefillin, you tell me tefillin is leather, holy leather boxes with straps that we place upon our arm and head during prayer time, during Shabbas. That's probably how you might define tefillin. And that would be a very, very good and true definition or description.
Rabbi?
Yes.
You just mentioned that if the name of Hashem is covered, then it's quote unquote safe to bring it to the bathroom. Does it mean that there is no saint influence when the name is covered? The name is covered in the tefillin, the name is covered in the mezuzah. In many circumstances, we sort of rely on the effectiveness on the sanctity of the name.
So let me make sure I understood your question. You're saying if the amulet being covered makes it so not there that you could bring it into the bathroom, does that same leather that protects the
name of Hashem?
So I'm saying, does the same leather that protects the sanctity of the name of Hashem also block the effectiveness of the kameah?
Yeah.
And that can't be, you're saying, because you know that tefillin work even though they're covered up, and a mezuzah is effective even though it's covered up. So I like that question. The Gemara asks a very similar question, which is why I think it's such a good question. So I'm going to answer you not based on the rationale, but based on what I know from our Gemara. Apparently, there is a difference between the effectiveness of the kameah, the amulet, and the disgracing of Hashem's name. And for whatever reason, I see Alan is perplexed, and I think it follows your general challenge with understanding kameahs and how it works. And I, again, in our intro that before the recording, I further acknowledged that discomfort. But apparently there is a distinction between the honoring of Hashem's name, which is effective and sufficient by covering it up, and the effectiveness. So a kameah should still work. And if it would, and more than that, it seems like the kameah is consistently covered up. So that the yes or no part of your question has been answered. Yes, the amulet works. Yes, the tefillin works. Yes, the mezuzah works, and yet it's not a problem. But there's another question, and your question, the next part of your question, I believe is better expressed by the Gemara than I can do. So let me see the Gemara, and Professor, please let me know if we fail to properly deal with your question. But let me just say the question. The question is, hold on. Tefillin, and this is what I wanted for you to imagine. Tefillin conceptually is a leather pouch. It has to be in a square and very precise dimensions and colors and form. But conceptually, the tefillin is a leather pouch with a strap that has within it parchments. Not that different than a kameah Of course, there's a very big difference. The kameya is there for some kind of healing purpose. The tefillin is there because Hashem says so in the Torah, and we're fulfilling Hashem's mitzvah. But there's something very similar. And we know that you're not allowed to wear tefillin into the bathroom. So why don't we consider tefillin to be covered up? The name of Hashem, the parshas are invisible. As a matter of fact, and I told you earlier on that last Thursday, I had the privilege, a week ago, I guess. No, Sunday, this Sunday. I had the privilege to help a new Jew, a wonderful man, own a pair of tefillin. And I explained to him a little bit about what a tefillin is. And I am certain that to him, he did not imagine that it would be, I told him you can't bring it to the bathroom. He didn't say, hey, but the parshas are covered up. As a matter of fact, until I showed him a photocopy of the parchment that was in the tefillin, he probably wouldn't have even realized that's what tefillin is. So let's see the Gemara's question. We got a problem. Tefillin, the mechupaisar, tefillin are the parchment, the parshiyos, the excerpts of the Torah and Hashem's name in the tefillin is entirely covered up with thick, unpenetrable leather. We learned in Maseches Brachos that if you need to go to the bathroom, you better take off your tefillin at a distance of 4 amas from the restroom, even though the name of Hashem is nowhere to be seen. Rashi, although it is covered up in leather, the 4 letters, the 4 scrolls, upon which 4 different passages of the Torah that describe the mitzvah of tefillin, which are found in every pair of tefillin today, they're placed into these leather pouches, so they're entirely covered. So the Gemara gives an interesting answer. And I would say that this Gemara is probably a starting point, not the end point, a starting point to understand why and what exactly the definition of tefillin is and what exactly is the sanctity of the tefillin. The Gemara is going to answer the sanctity of tefillin is not simply what is inside the pouch or what we would describe as the box of the tefillin, but also the box of tefillin itself. What is the evidence that the box of tefillin itself has a great degree of sanctity? Hasam mishum shin. Tefillin is not just a box. The tefillin itself has the letter shin. If any of you have a pair of tefillin handy, you'll take it out, you'll take a look, and you'll see that on the tefillin shel rosh, on the head tefillin, there is a letter shin on both sides of the tefillin. Here, I have a tefillin here. Let me see if I can take off my background. It's probably too complicated, but let me see. Video. Shooters. All right, now you can probably see this a little better. So I have over here a pair of tefillin. And if you look at it, you see there's the box. This is the head tefillin. So if you look carefully, you see those lines or grooves. Those lines are actually separations that go all the way down. It's actually 4 compartments. And inside are 4 parchments. If you look carefully over here, I know I'm here. If you look carefully, you see that line on the very bottom of the tefillin? That's where the tefillin is actually able to be opened up. If you would undo this stitching, you could open it up and you can actually see those parchments. But what we're discussing now is, I'm trying to get the right glare so you can see the shin, the letter shin that's on the tefillin. The letter shin. As a side note, I should point out these tefillin were actually my grandfather's tefillin. And when he passed away, my grandmother said, Label, why don't you have them checked? And if they're in good condition, I know you're probably going to put them to the most use because you're always meeting people and suggesting they put on tefillin. And so I was the lucky recipient of my grandfather's tefillin. And so I have the privilege of sharing the mitzvah with people and also honoring him by keeping those tefillin in use. So, but that's the tefillin, and that's the shin. And that shin is evidence that the tefillin itself is holy. And it's because the box itself has the shin that you can't bring it into the bathroom, because the box of the tefillin may prevent, may protect, may cover. The parshiyos may cover, as Rashi describes. And I love how Rashi sometimes we take certain things for granted, but if you're a commentary, you need to really break it down. So he describes this, that it's like a bunch of letters, scrolls, with the writing of the portions, the excerpts of the Torah, inside these little pouches, which is the tefillin. But on the outside, you still have the shin. Hasa mishum shin. Now let's see where we know that there's a shin on tefillin. Now, the way you and I, Alan, how do you know there's a shin? Alan, Reb Alan, is there a shin on your tefillin?
Sure.
So how do you know there's a shin on your tefillin?
It's on the outside.
Because you looked at it.
Sure.
And that's how all of us know. But the Gemara is not going to be comfortable with me saying, how do I know there's a shin on my tefillin? Because there is. The Gemara wants to go to the genesis, or to the origin of this tradition. And so the Gemara says, the Amar Abaya taught, you know why our tefillin has a shin on it? Shin shel tefillin. The shin that's found on the tefillin is halacha l'Moshe miSinai. This is a tradition that dates back to the beginning of Jewish practice, to the time of Moshe Rabbeinu. It is an oral tradition. It's not written in the Torah, but Chazal and our sages have this tradition that the ideal pair of tefillin has to have a shin. Amar Abaya also added, Dalid shel tefillin, halacha l'Moshe miSinai. There's also a Dalid on the tefillin. We'll discuss in Rashi what that is. That's also, hold on, no, I said we'll discuss in Rashi and in Rabbi Steinsaltz. But Amar Abaya, Yod shel tefillin, halacha l'Moshe miSinai. So Abaya teaches us that there are 3 Hebrew letters that need to be formed by the external part of the tefillin. It's not enough that you have parchment, parshiyos, inside the tefillin. There must also be the letter shin on the tefillin, the letter dalid, dalis, dalid of the tefillin, and the letter yud of the tefillin. Let's see Rabbi Steinsaltz, and then we'll see Rashi. So the shin is the easy thing. It's what's protruding from the leather of the boxes that house the scrolls in the phylacteries of the head. What is the dalit? So Abaya said the knot in the shape of the dalit in the straps of the tefillin. So there's also a dalit in the tefillin shel rosh. Now here's why I cut off Mark, although it's kind of rude of me. Because in truth, the essential need to have these letters is universal, but I would like to explore the different possibilities of how those letters could exist. So Rabbi Steinsaltz says, take a look at your tefillin, and I'll show you my grandfather's tefillin, which actually this knot is, it's not only Chabad, but this is the knot that Chabad uses as well. And if you look, I know it's hard to see, it's kind of small and the light doesn't, but it looks like a kind of Dalid. If you would have told me a reish, that would also, if you would tell me it looked like a reish on a test, I would probably give you points for it, but it's meant to look like a Dalid. And now the reason why I cut off Mark is because some people actually have a square knot, right? So there's different minhagim of exactly how, but there's different ways that the Dalid could be presented. And then Shin and Dalid and Yud. And the Yud, again, I'm going to show you on my tefillin, but again, there are different minhagim exactly how this is manifest. But the knot of the shel yad, of the hand tefillin, also with some creativity, could look a little bit like a yud. And again, if you look at your tefillin, everyone's tefillin looks kind of different. Creatively, this could also look like a yud. Let's see Rabbi Steinsaltz further. He says that the dalit on the strap of the shorosh, and Abaya also says the yud of the tefillin. So essentially, in a more artistic or creative way, by the way, if anyone doubts that Judaism has art in it, there are many ways that would be incorrect. But I think we could say that this abstract representation of Hashem's name in the tefillin certainly would be an interesting starting point, where we have this representation in the way we form the tefillin. And so we're talking here about the shin, the dalet, and the yud that spell Hashem's name, that make the tefillin sanctified not only because of what is inside of it, but also the very item that we call tefillin, the box and straps and all collectively exude the sanctity of Hashem's name. Rashi. Shin, she'asuya mi'or hachitzon, atzmoi. It is made out of the very pouch of the tefillin, the box of the tefillin itself. Koimet boy gimel kamatin. When you're working the leather, and I want to point out that the last 200, 300, 400 years has seen a lot of development, and more than that, in what we're able to do with leather. And so the technique and the technology that allows us to make our tefillin look really precise and flashy, and the shins really look like shins. It's plausible if you read in Rashi that it wasn't always as easy. It's also, if you read Rashi, that Rashi knew how the making process worked itself. You didn't just see the final product. So imagine that on the exterior of the tefillin box, you make gimel kamotim, make 3 folds, 3 crinkles, wrinkles, crinkles, folds. I think folds is the best word. If Ira was on, he'd give us the right words to describe this. Ke'ein shin. It would look like the letter shin. Mei shakai, the name of Hashem shin dal yud. The dalet and the yud are fashioned in the knots of the straps. Achas l'tzafain v'achas l'mizrach. 1 to the north, 1 to the east. And so he says on the hand tefillin, I think that little piece of leather that sticks out of the knot, that could look like a yud, the kaifa, v'ard, ha'ar lach, v'kfufa la'olam. And you fashion the straps to have this nature.
Rabbi,
Yes.
you haven't solved the problem with a thing like a mezuzah. Some of them have nothing on the outside. Would you be allowed to carry that into a bathroom?
Certainly not. And that's why we don't put images on the bathroom wall. Right?
And today there's a big shiloh. We have jewelry with prayers in it. Even the paintings on the wall of a prayer, disposal. It's not so simple.
It is indeed not simple at all. And there's another problem, which I thought you were going to bring up, which is today there is a organization called the Kabbalah Center. I'm not going to get into what I feel about it, but there's a lot of commercialization of Kabbalistic things, and it's not all bogus. I think sometimes, in my opinion, it might not be properly represented, or it might be commercialized in a way that I might not be comfortable with. But setting that aside, if you would buy a T-shirt with certain letters and you think, oh, it's just like random letters, but actually those letters might come from important Kabbalistic ideas that are very holy, and it shouldn't be on a T-shirt that goes into the bathroom. And I'll tell you something else. When I was a yeshiva student, and I was, remember when? So the Chabad yeshiva students at the base medrash and older level, so the college equivalent, in the summers, for a week or 2 or 3 or 4, depending on the yeshiva and the schedule, you can volunteer to be dispatched through the Chabad headquarters, and they send the yeshiva students across the globe to different areas that do not presently have a permanent Chabad center, and the students will reach out to isolated Jews, provide them with Jewish literature, mezuzahs, tefillin, and keep Jews connected and engaged. And this happens all over the globe every year to this day. Many of the Chabad houses in the exotic places like Iceland and, many places, and all of the Caribbean islands today, which just about every Caribbean big destination has Chabad. And the like. And I suspect, Dr. Hammer, that Portugal was the same. For many years, they would have yeshiva students visiting. And then at a certain point, either because there was a critical mass there was a certain amount of interest, or creation of community, or sometimes there were pre-existing communities that decided that they wanted
a major donor.
Or a major donor. That is sometimes an important component as well. And so many Chabad communities developed out of these shlichut, these yeshiva students that are sent around the globe. The way it's referred to in the Chabad is Merkaz Shlichut, which means Shlichut sent from Merkaz, which is the name of the central Chabad organization. So you have the ability to ask, make a request, but I was a smart aleck with my friend, and we said, we're going to sign up, but we're not going to ask. We'll go wherever we're needed. We don't care. It doesn't need to be exotic. We'll just, put us somewhere. But I'm not going to say that I wasn't disappointed when instead of going to Bali or to Hawaii or whatever, they sent us to the villages in the the villages around Burbank, California. That's pretty unexotic, to be honest. But I was never in California. So we went to Burbank. Is a valley, if I recall correctly, and in the mountains all around it, there are these little villages and towns and people living in the mountains that are not that isolated relative to a Jew living in a country who lives in the Chabad, but they were untapped. And the Chabad Shaliach of Burbank arranged for us to come down and to visit all those areas. Long story short, one of the people that we found was in this like very terrifyingly steep drive down a mountain to one of the canyons. This guy had a big ranch, if I recall, and there was many scary kind of dogs, bulldogs, to intimidate and keep people away. But someone had told us that this guy was Jewish, and so we persisted. And eventually the guy comes out, he's not wearing a shirt, full of tattoos. And the only evidence that he might have been Jewish was the fact that he had very prominently placed on his chest, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Now, if he'd asked me as a rabbi, should he do that, I'd probably advise him not to. But on the flip side, it's obviously a declaration of some very proud Jewish, unchanneled, untamed Jewish pride. And so we had a very, very interesting encounter. Unfortunately, I don't have the pictures anymore. We took a picture with him, but I don't know where those pictures went. But suffice it to say, the point is, here's my point. You got a problem when you have the name of Hashem on your skin or on your shirt or on a bracelet or a necklace or whatever. It gets complicated. So that was a long tangent. But
Yeah.
Doctor?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, he does have to go to the bathroom at some point.
Yeah.
But I think what Beryl said is very prominent. The jewelry, even among, quote, observant, religious young girls, some of the things, and boys. But I thought of something which is so unintentional that I'm guilty of, okay? And it involves Chabad. Chabad at airports often has a little stand and they give out little cards with Tfilas Haderech. And people like me, okay, years ago, put something like that in your wallet to have it with you when you need it. And your wallet often goes with you to the bathroom. So there's an issue there.
So doctor, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Is there any, and it's a great question. Is there anything in this Gemara that might inform the acceptability of bringing a wallet with tefillin into the bathroom?
Right. First of all, it's double wrapped because it's in a folder, in a leather casing.
A leather pouch,
right,
in your pocket probably,
right,
or something.
Right. And I only use it when there's a real fear of danger. You know, I'm going up in a airplane.
You're going in a plane, Mesiras Nefesh.
Right, because Nefesh, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So based on our Gemara, and this is not a halacha shir, but based on our Gemara, every indication we have here is that would be okay because it's in a leather pouch and in a double covering, as you pointed out.
Right.
And so, for example, the tefillin has to be in a double covering, right?
Right.
So there you have it. But back to our Gemara.
The guy with the tattoo, he just has to wear 2 shirts all the time.
Well, the guy with the tattoo didn't ask me, but I'm sure when the time comes and he is sufficiently interested in his Jewish practice, he's going to have some interesting things to consider.
I guess if he had 2 T-shirts on, he'd be okay.
I guess. You know, there's a famous picture of a guy in the military who had a tattoo that said matzah on it. And someone convinced him, unfortunately, that it was on Facebook or something. He'd asked one of the guys what strength. And what I suspect happened is he heard the word ometz or something to that effect. And somehow that was turned to be matzah. And so there's someone in the U.S. military walking around with a tattoo that says matzah. Now, the good news is I don't think there's anything wrong with bringing the word matzah into the bathroom. But anyways, long story short, the Gemara says, you know why you can't bring your tefillin into the bathroom? Because it has on the exterior the letter shin and yud, dalet, and yud. And then Tosfos, by the way, just real fast, pops in here and says, hey, loy gar sinon dalet v'yud shel tefillin. The dalet and the yud of tefillin are really not relevant to our discussion. As the Gemara later on, the Gemara recently says, basically, he infers from an earlier Gemara that the kind of sanctity that's present in the letter dalet and yud of the Ritzuos is not at all on par with the kind of sanctity of the shin on the tefillin, and therefore Tosfos rejects. Tosfos says he has a different version of the Gemara, and therefore he cuts out the Dalet and the Yud of tefillin. So that's Rashi and Tosfos. Let's just see if the Rashba has anything more to add. Rashba also says that you should take out that girsa. Same idea as Tosfos. Let's see the Ben Yoyada for a moment. He asks the opposite kind of question. He asked the question from the different perspective in Tosfos. He says, Yesh lahakshos. The Gemara should have been written differently. It should have just said Shin, Dalid, Yud of Tefillin Halach L'Moshe Sinai. Why does the Gemara present each one with its own announcement? Right? Let's go back to the Gemara. Amar Abaye, Amar Abaye, Amar Abaye. Why does the Gemara structure it as three separate statements? Why doesn't it just lump it all together? It would sound, if the Gemara would word it differently, that for tefillin to work, you need to have the letter shin and dal and yud all together. Im lavash tefillin sharash bilvad, and in the apps, if you only wore the head tefillin, she'ein bo yud lahashlim, loy aved mitzvah. You might think that you haven't fulfilled the mitzvah because you don't have the yud that's present in the shalyad, and maybe you're not doing it properly. For that reason, it's presented each letter in isolation. Each one is a separate halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and even if you don't have the complete package, you're okay. It's okay if you don't have it all in one. I'm going to ask you a question. What's this question if you don't have the shalyad? Of course you have to wear a shalyad.
No, but Rabbi, it's very important because someone would think that he could walk in with just the yad or just the rush.
Yeah. So here's the deal. Halachically, ultimately, you've got to wear a shalyad and a shalarosh, and halachically, you're supposed to put on the shalyad first. But let me bring to you two scenarios. God forbid a person loses their arm. Do they have to wear the tefillin shalarosh? And the answer is yes. Because ultimately, it's two separate mitzvahs. And the Ben Yoyada is saying that if you make it sound like the shin, the dal, and the yud all need to be present, you might tell the person the wrong message that they aren't fulfilling the mitzvah without the shalyad. Maybe the guy should give up. What else? What if you're stranded, God forbid, on an island? Or you're traveling and you go through security and the security confiscates your tefillin shalyad, God forbid. Shelo neda. But it could happen. So do you put on your shalarosh? And the answer is yes, you do. I'm sure we could come up with other creative scenarios, but I just wanted to illustrate why this could potentially be relevant.
Well, in that case, you'd have to go to your local Chabad to get another.
That's why you need to make sure to go to your local Chabad.
They always have a complete set.
Hopefully.
And of course, you could also have a cast on your arm.
Or if you have a cast on your arm, exactly.
More common.
Or other kind of injury that doesn't allow you to do so 100%.
It's all bandaged. You could put on the shalyad but not the shalarosh.
Yeah. I mean, the halacha discusses if there's. Yeah.
I had a weird case. I had a weird case of a friend that was allergic to the leather somehow.
Oh my goodness. Is that a real thing?
Yeah, for a while he wore the shalarosh. People looked at him like he was crazy. It was almost a year till they figured out the right cream.
Oh my goodness! So you hear that's a real life scenario.
Yeah. But the disposal today of all these writings of prayers on people, they should come with a note that you can't dispose of it just like that.
Yeah.
Well, the thing we pass out every Shabbos it says it on it.
What is that?
The thing we did that.
Please respect the sanctity. Yes. Yes.
To remind people. Every so often, the newspaper will print something and it'll have a picture of something in it, and the alert goes out to the community to, be careful.
There's
a picture and it says has something in it. Don't throw that part away.
Yeah.
Thousands of pieces of jewelry that they produce with a prayer inside.
Well, that's why it's really not. It's preferred not to do so. not to create jewelry with,
Yeah.
but you have people that do ani ledodi or varstichli olam, right, or other kinds of psukim, and it's something that is really ideally should not be done because it's so easy for people not to realize. Then you have like Shema Yisrael wristbands, although I think those they intentionally write it in a way that it's not Hashem's name. But there you have it. You know what? I think we're going to stop here. We have just 2 minutes left. Today's Gemara, in short, we finished up the discussion about the kameya. Ultimately, we discussed that you're allowed to wear it outside, regardless of if it is for a person that's mortally sick or not, regardless of if it has herbs or if it has writings. And the reason ultimately is because it's in a leather pouch. The leather pouch, although it is effective for a kameya, makes it not effective, or not a problem rather, for the purposes of the sanctity of Hashem's name. Why is that any different than tefillin? Well, because tefillin has Hashem's name on the outside too, the shin of it. That's the short version of today's Gemara. Of course, we had a few lengthy discussions about the sanctity of tefillin and other ways that this could be a concern, and other stuff. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for this Gemara session. I hope you'll join us tomorrow, where we'll continue. And tomorrow, just to give you a sneak peek, we're going to be looking at military armor. And this is printed in the Steinsaltz Gemara, so you can imagine what a Roman warrior, what folks of that era would look like. And that will be the discussion tomorrow, the Ezras Hashem.
Somebody once said, all you need to do, go to war with them, is bring magnets.
Magnets. Interesting. Oh, let me just close. I put in the WhatsApp, but let's dedicate retroactively today's learning, l'schus refuah shlema, for, what did I write? Hold on. L'schus refuah shlema for Chana Rezel Bas Henagela. We should have good news for all of Klal Yisrael. See you all tomorrow by Ezer Hashem. Same time, same link. Please join in a minute. We're going to end the link, and there Shalom will be doing the Chumash class as well. Yasher Koyach.
Amen.
Amen.